Hi, my name is Josh Baldovino, and I'm here on the Ideal Hour podcast with Simon Katz, and we're going to talk all things business, marketing, and investing. I'm excited.
Hey everybody, Simon here, and on this episode of the Ideal Hour, I got Joshua Baldovino. I hope I pronounced his name right. We went over it earlier, but he is a local Bay Area entrepreneur that's here on my podcast. I've actually reached out to him on Instagram, and he was nice enough to come out all this way. I'm not that far away, right? But but he came out all this way, and he's going to share his entrepreneur experiences. He also has a podcast, which he told me he's done over 70 episodes, which is extremely impressive. There is like some statistics that not many people make it past episode like 5 or something. And he'll talk about his real estate investments, marketing, and just being an entrepreneur in the Bay Area. So we're going to have a really good podcast. Joshua, thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to have you here. I don't know you. That's the truth. Sometimes that makes for a much more engaging, much better experience. And I really want to know more about you. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, we're officially friends now since I drove all the way of 30 minutes to get here. And so now you can drop the ooh. I like the ooh when it's written down, but you can just call me Josh.
I like that. Thank you.
So on the quick macro level, I am a marketer and I'm a real estate investor. And actually those terms are kind of what I have embraced only in the last few years. So I've kind of done way too many things. I've worked in higher education in another state, started a CrossFit gym, a clothing brand, and different things. So now I'm finally feeling, now in my mid-30s, that I'm honing in on what I actually like and what I think works for me.
Very cool. So first thing I want to say is you look fit, which is good news. When I shook your hand, I was like, this is a strong hand. This is a good thing. Let's talk about, you mentioned the CrossFit gym. People are like health nuts in the Bay Area, which is a good thing, I think. I think, having a fit body relates to the mind and it carries over. How was it like having a CrossFit gym, being around individuals that are that type of mindset? And give me some maybe experiences in running a CrossFit gym, and was it profitable? Not, go into as much as you want. It's kind of interesting.
So the context for that is my entire life I did Taekwondo as a kid. So from 4 to 22, Taekwondo, and then in college I started to dive into MMA.
Really?
And so I trained at AKA back in, 2000 and mid-2000s.
Okay.
And
AKA is a hell of a gym.
It was.
In San Jose?
Yes, in San Jose.
Okay.
And so that was a blast.
Yeah.
I remember doing smokers and things like that.
Yeah.
And then at that time when I was going through college, I wanted to get into law enforcement.
Okay.
So when I finished college, there was a hiring freeze all across the state.
Okay.
And my parents at the time did not want me to go into law enforcement.
Yeah, well, now they're probably like, thank God you didn't.
And so my mom's, I guess, I don't know, bribe or incentive is probably the better word to say it. She said, I will pay for half a grad school if you go to grad school.
Okay.
And I said, I will take you up on that.
Okay.
But you didn't tell me where. And so then I went to University of Hawaii for my master's.
Which is a beautiful place.
And that's where I found CrossFit.
Okay.
I needed to train, but at that time, I didn't want to get hit in the head anymore.
Sure.
CrossFit was the next best thing to have that same level of intensity.
Okay.
And not end up with black eyes for your first day of class.
Or your body just hating you the next morning.
If you get competitive in CrossFit, and anyone who is competitive in CrossFit,
it will hate you.
It will. But at least your shins don't balloon up to the size of whatever they do. So,
MMA is such so I've done, first of all, I think MMA is the superior martial arts. And when I say MMA, I'm talking like the complete complexity of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, striking, which is basically Muay Thai with grappling, right? In some sense, it is what I would define as MMA. And of course, there's, I'm not the pro at it. But I think that's the most superior. Why didn't you try something like jiu-jitsu to not have maybe your black eyes? Because in MMA, you're going to get black eyes. And I've tried Krav Maga, and there was a lot of contact in it, but it's more self-defense. It's not like you're in a 5-minute bout. It's more in like you're in a 30-second potential deadly situation. You got to get the hell out of the room. But sometimes they would kick me in my nuts or in my stomach, and it would hurt in these trainings that we would do. Yeah. So I can imagine. Why not try jiu-jitsu instead of CrossFit, let's say?
So I was doing jiu-jitsu at the same time while I was at AKA.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing it at Heroes, and I did it for a couple years.
Okay.
And for me, I did martial arts my entire life.
Okay.
And so it was kind of just a stimulus change for me.
I see.
You
were over it a little bit.
Yeah. I did it for 18 years at some capacity.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I really want to get strong. And so I had some weightlifting goals, and eventually it turned into, taking my management of martial arts schools from college into a buddy saying, hey, you kind of know how to run this sort of business.
So cool.
I have some capital, and I'm, at this point, I'm still taking student loans because I got another half of the school to pay for.
Yeah.
I said, I have no money, but I have ran a 250-person martial arts school before.
That's crazy.
Systems are the same.
Yeah.
And
Why not do it for myself?
And he said, if I front the capital, can you give me the systems?
Yeah.
Sure. And so that was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey.
Where was this CrossFit gym at? Was it in the Bay Area?
No, this was in Honolulu.
In Honolulu. Okay, sorry. And how did that? What happened with that business? Did it run well? Did you ultimately say this is not for me, or?
Yeah, and now we're opening a different can of worms here.
Yeah, this happens. I'm sorry.
So no, that's okay. So he was in the military.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were doing long workouts on the weekends. And so this one particular workout, actually, where we're talking about business ideas, was a 10-mile run with then 150 burpee pull-ups afterwards.
Oof.
So we have a long time to talk to each other. We're just talking the entire way, right? So we're not going very hard.
Okay.
And so we're talking about this idea.
When you said 10-mile run, I that's not for me.
And I can't do that now. This is 7, 8 years ago, right? Yeah. So I'm less fit than I was then, for sure.
Of course.
But at that time, he said, great, let's open this business now. And that was the first initial conversation. Mm-hmm. And so he said, all right, we're both single at the time. For the next, twice a week, let's go take out other coaches, other gym owners, just to figure out how they're doing it. And so we did. And actually, one of the meetings spun out to, both of us are from the mainland, from the continental US. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was buying everything. When you go to Hawaii, you want to buy everything that says Hawaii High, has a shaka on it.
So funny. You're part of this community, right?
Yeah, but I am, but I'm still the outsider, right? Because I'm from here.
I
so
see.
It's an interesting thing. And at that time, there was no identifier for people who did CrossFit in Hawaii. There was no Hawaii's fitness brand.
Really?
And so
that's actually a big market.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so when we were taking out the gym owner, and I said, hey, you guys should really make a shirt that says shakas and snatches.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, man, that's stupid. Why the hell would I do that? And the next day, my buddy texted me. We're at the meeting together, and he goes, I'll front the money. You want to make some shirts too?
That's funny.
And so in the span of 2 weeks, we started a clothing brand and a CrossFit gym idea. The clothing brand launched first, and then 6 months later, the CrossFit gym launched.
That's awesome. So what happened with this CrossFit gym or the clothing brand? Because Hawaiians are, like you said, they're very passionate about something that you bring to the table, and they do have a big following. And I've seen very cool clothing when we would travel to Hawaii on vacation and so forth. They have like their own niche market, I would say.
Yeah.
They're not about the big brand, say Adidas, on their plastered shirt all day. They want their own little local feel vibe or whatever, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it made it a little bit easier. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of Asians in Hawaii as well.
Sure.
And so we kind of fit the transplant demographic.
I see.
And then I also lived there for a number of years, so I got to really understand and respect the culture. And I wasn't trying to say, I am making this for Hawaiians.
Okay, so you had to watch that. So if you're, so what Josh here is saying is, even though he lived there, he didn't want to come in kind of as, I'm the authentic Hawaiian type.
No. That is, the native Hawaiian community is very strong, and it's a whole nother, that is something that I never ever touched. But going into the CrossFit gym, the plan was to always open the CrossFit gym in the Bay Area.
Okay.
We had a third business partner that actually he always wanted to open a gym with. I was kind of that last piece of, well, who's actually done something like this before?
Yeah.
And she at that time was living in San Jose. I'm from the Bay Area. And I said, cool, I'm going to finish my master's degree in 8 months anyways. Let's just I'll finish the degree out, and you're going out of the military at the end of the year too. This is great timing. Let's just find a spot out there, and then she can start looking for places. And so the plan was, can we start and open up the gym while both of us are still finishing up in Hawaii, and then eventually move out there?
Okay.
And the clothing brand was still going to be based in Honolulu, though.
Okay.
And we would
was
just
it going to
go back
still
and
have
forth.
like a Honolulu vibe CrossFit out here, like maybe the same name, or is it going to be French? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then at that time, now we're 6 months into running the clothing brand, and we've gotten. It's really interesting because there was no identifier, it made it slightly easier to market.
Okay.
Because now, when influencer marketing just started to pick up,
Which got huge. I mean, now it's
everything.
number one.
Yeah.
Marketing, like brand ambassadors are the marketing trend. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, so if you remember in 2013, your Instagram account looked like your vacation pictures with the lo-fi filter is probably what you put on.
Yeah.
And it was very easy for us to say, hey, we're a brand from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Let me send you a shirt, send you some coffee from
and
here.
And they'd be so all for it.
Yeah, I get a care package from Hawaii. Totally. Yeah. And then now you have this person who has 20,000 followers, or a lot back then.
Yep.
I'll take a picture of me working out with the shirt.
Yeah.
And that's how we organically grew fast, was just being the first one to market in that region.
That's awesome.
And then we opened up the gym. After that, a few months later, we did have some disagreements. Okay. And so he ended up taking the gym. I ended up taking the clothing brand. I then, a few months later, moved back to Hawaii for a few more years to run that through.
Okay.
And
ultimately?
I'm back here now, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so we did eventually break down the clothing brand. I think my lessons learned.
That's what I was going to ask you, because, and sorry to interrupt you. Guys, I've had business partners in many businesses. It's a marriage. It's tough. It's not easy. And we're going to hear from Josh as some of his lessons learned right now, right? This is it's not easy. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I mean, people change, people's goals change.
Their life changes.
Yeah.
They get married, remarried, move, whatever.
Divorced, whatever it could be.
Divorce is big.
And so as your personal relationships change, it does, you build it to eventually sell it or exit is what I've learned now.
Yeah.
And what I wish I did before, so I guess there's two lessons learned from owning a gym and owning a clothing brand. The lesson learned from me on owning the gym is that staffing is very hard. Sure. Especially when it comes to adult fitness.
Interesting. I would think with the staffing part, there's a company, Rogue Fitness. You know them. I mean, they're the ones supplying all the CrossFits, right? They have the CrossFit Games and all this. And they expanded so quick. I was like, the staffing is hard in the Bay Area, period. Let's say out here. I'm not even going to go into that because it gets political. But when it's Rogue Fitness, and I've seen them expand so much, I was like, how are they able to staff so much? And it's because I always thought that the mindset of the fitness individual is so much greater, or they're like, let's get it done. Let's go extra push-ups. Well, I'll work harder, this and that. Is that not the case?
So if you take Rogue's not in the coaching
Ohio
business.
Yeah.
They're in the manufacturing equipment business, which especially if they're manufacturing from the entire, from ground up, they're not just white labeling some product from Alibaba.
Sure.
Their margins are huge.
Yeah.
Which would actually is my lesson learned for the clothing company, is that selling a $25 shirt, your margins aren't big.
Because you're buying it, you're not the manufacturer of that
I'm not.
shirt.
I'm not building. I'm buying T-shirts at $9, $10 a pop.
You're shipping,
spending $5, $6 to print, and now what am I making $4, $5 on a shirt?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of margin there.
Yeah. And then you're splitting it 3 ways or 2 ways.
And then on the gym side, I didn't have the business acumen at that time to think about what is the level of service that I can charge for.
Okay, so you feel you were undercharging.
I didn't even realize that charging more was possible.
Okay, you didn't experiment with that. You didn't. Were you afraid to maybe charge, or you didn't even think about it?
I mean, you kind of think about it, right? At that time, if you charged $200 a month for a CrossFit gym, that was expensive. And that's probably more expensive than most of the gyms in the area. And that's right there aligned with, NorCal Cross is probably the best CrossFit gym in the Bay Area, and they've been the longest standing.
Yeah.
And that was right about that
threshold.
Yeah, and so
you're worried. You're like, hey, how can I charge this if these guys are charging that?
And my model was the same as their model, but with less bells and whistles and less celebrity.
I see.
And so, I mean, we didn't think about it at that time. Yeah. But yeah, it's and anyone who's thinking about opening a gym, if you are going I'm gonna help everyday people get fit, which is a great market. That's the biggest market.
Yeah.
You also are capped by your class sizes.
How big your place is.
Yeah. So if you can service 30 people at one given time, maybe you need a coach and a half, maybe 2 coaches. And
there's like that fine number, because then you have to hire the second coach that's double the salary. And you may not get double the people to cover his salary, so to speak, to offset his costs, right?
Yes. So there is, I forget what the number is, but there are so little gyms that actually net $1 million a year.
Really?
That most, I mean, and I'm sure you know Alex 𝐁𝐚 now at this point.
Yep.
Most gym owners are also the gym operators.
Yep.
And that's like they can make an okay salary.
So you're saying in the gym space, if you're going to do it, or even in like a jiu-jitsu space, it's a very similar concept. They charge about $200 a month nowadays. And then I know that anytime there's an upcoming raise in fees, everybody in the class, and probably at AKA as well, they're punching the bag harder, worrying. So it's most of them are there running it and training, or they're one of the trainers, or they're one of the coaches, or so you're saying in the gym space, it's very hard, from what I understand, to hire someone to get away. You really have to be there to make money, to save on salary, et cetera, to even save on salary and make sure operation is going well.
And it all depends on how much you want to make.
Okay.
Right. So I think if someone is opening a gym and either has another job and they're doing this on the side, and they can hire a full-time manager and be okay with 10 to 15% of profits.
Yeah.
And then scale that business as it grows, but you probably won't grow for a significant amount of time because you're not, unless your manager's amazing.
Okay.
Right.
I see. So let's get back to the partners. No, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this conversation, by the way, because you're adding these things that I haven't experienced, or someone telling me about running a gym, running a clothing brand, and so forth. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's get back to the partners. What were some of the challenges? And you don't have to like name the partners or anything, but what were some of the challenges? Like, what would you recommend to, say, someone watching this podcast that, and I get people all the time asking me this on Instagram or in the comments on YouTube, and my YouTube channel is bigger than my Instagram, but they go, hey, what should I consider in a business partner? What should I look for? Why should I have one? What would you give as advice from your lessons to look for in a business partner and to avoid, or anything like that?
Yeah, when I'm looking for business partners, the policy that I put in place for myself now is transparency upfront, and definitely I look for someone, or I'll even probe to overshare.
Okay.
So all the dirty laundry, everything that has been done in the past, or whatever your current situations are now, that all has to be laid out. So if you are starting a business and you're watching this, and someone's not open with sharing, hey, here's how much money I have. Yeah. That's an immediate red flag for me now.
Okay.
So you have to be transparent in everything, whether it be relationships, whether it be money, ethical situations. If this happened in the business, how would you want to handle it? And answer all of those awkward, weird questions first before signing on the dotted line or handing your money over to go ahead and do the business.
So Joshua is saying, not just financially, you need to know if they're capable of helping you out in a hard time, but also relationship-wise, are they stable? Are they on drugs? Are they what is their past or their criminal history? Whatever it is, you really have to get to know that person. Yeah. It's almost like you have to meet their mom and dad to judge who they are as a person or their family, or what the outcomes are going to be, kind of like dating, is what
100%.
I would always say. That question follows up with a question, and this interview, I must say, guys, is so engaging to me that I haven't even followed my questions. But that question follows up with a question: would you have a business partner again?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've had multiple business partners now after that.
Since
then, we, a few years later, I got into real estate investing, and so we've bought in real estate deals, which are their own businesses, whether it be long-term rentals or short-term rentals or an apartment complex with other people. Mm-hmm. And the way that we structure those businesses are also now very different too. Okay. Especially when you're thinking about real estate syndication, very, very different, and a lot more money involved too than a clothing brand. So I think whatever experiences you have, whether they're good or bad, you have to take that lesson learned and then just move it forward. But it's not going to prevent me from not doing another business deal with somebody else again.
Got it. So you're basically saying, hey, the past is the past. I've learned a lesson. This is a new person. Now I know how to value that person or value their assets to my new partnership. I shouldn't, just because I had a bad past, say, girlfriend, I'm not judging that based on my future relationship.
Totally.
Doors are open.
Totally. And you also can't control the other person that you meet.
Yeah.
So all you can control is how you react to it.
So you're willing to risk the potential of the problems that business partners can bring for the potential of the opportunity of what you guys could build together is what it is. So you're looking for that. You're outweighing the potential of making money versus the potential of dealing with heartache of having a business partner, which
100%.
Okay.
I mean, that is...
Yep, that's most effective.
Yeah.
You mentioned real estate. Before we get into real estate, you're also into marketing. You mentioned a podcast you have. You sound like a person kind of like me. My mother used to say, I have needles in my butt. I couldn't sit still. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but she said it in Russian. And that's a lot. That's a lot to manage and do and perfect. So we're going to go into a little bit further into that a little bit later. But let's talk about real estate. What are your best strategies? You mentioned multi-unit investments or real estate investments. You mentioned some partners. What do you do with that?
Yeah, so I guess to go into your shiny object question, answers then the real estate question, all of that happened through COVID. So we all picked up hobbies in COVID, and mine was real estate investing. And we had a nest egg when we moved back from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we just had our first kid. We decided to close down the clothing brand just because the margins weren't there. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
you have one kid?
I had one. Now I have two.
You have two. Very good.
But at that time, I had one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And so we moved back to the Bay Area to be closer to family.
Yeah.
We needed help. And so COVID happened. And when we moved back, actually, my dad said, hey, you can live here if you want.
Oh, that's nice of him.
But you have to at least put at least $3,000 every single month into a checking account or into a savings account, and that's your down payment.
Wow. You know what? First of all, that's incredible that your dad has offered that. That just shows how smart of a man he is. And instead of saying, give me money.
Yeah.
Which a lot of parents do out here in the Bay Area. I mean, I that's one thing I admire about Asian culture is that you guys take care of each other. You're very hardworking, very progressive. You guys continue to build. You continue to come into great neighborhoods. You worked your way into those neighborhoods. Nothing's been handed. Love that culture. But that just shows you the mentality of a family. A good family in an Asian community is move in, save your money, buy, and expand. And that's incredible. So you did that.
So that was the nest egg.
Yeah.
It was a couple years. COVID did happen too, which means that we're not going to move anywhere anyways because no one, aside from...
You probably weren't allowed to leave Hawaii.
Well, no, I was back here in San Jose, remember?
Thank God.
And I remember then looking at the account, a couple years later, we put some extra money into it. We had $100,000.
Congrats. That's
good. I said, man, that's the most money I ever had in my life.
Yep.
That's really fun. And then as I started to look at home prices, I thought, well, the mortgage payment's still $8,000 a month.
What was the interest rate at that time?
I mean, it's probably like in like the 4s or 5s or something like that.
No, it seems sweet compared to what it is.
Well, I have a whole other thing on should you rent or should you buy now. But at the time, I thought, okay, we could put a down payment on a house, but then I could rent a house for $3,000.
Yeah.
Or we could buy something, and yes, we would have equity, but then we would be strapped to $7,000 to $8,000 a month.
Okay.
And at that time, both my wife and I were making, $60,000, $70,000 each.
Yeah.
Which means that you probably shouldn't afford an $8,000 mortgage payment.
Yeah, you're pushing yourself way beyond. On a bad month, it could.
Yeah.
Be really bad.
After 6 months, like say both of us got laid off, which the likelihood of that I don't know, but COVID's crazy.
It's happened to families, realistically.
And so I said, well, I didn't want to do that. Hey, Dad, I think actually I'm going to take $25,000 of this and I'm going to buy a rental property in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, because it was so much cheaper there.
Yeah, and he said, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like this is our plan, right? You were supposed to live here for 3 years.
So you took your dad's graciousness and you spun it on him and surprised them with, hey, I'm buying an investment.
I did. I said, well, Dad, let's lay this down. Here are the numbers. If I buy a house right now, your mortgage payment is $2,000, or it's less than $2,000.
Yeah.
My mortgage payment would be $8,000. Yeah. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm basically stressing to make sure I make that payment and worrying what my boss thinks of me every week or at the end of the month.
Yeah, and he went, oh yeah, that's how much mortgage payments are right now?
Yeah, they didn't know, huh?
And I mean, but who's really, if you're not shopping for a house, you're not running that. You just know that, man.
You know what you know.
Yeah, my house appreciated a lot. That's awesome equity. And that's it. And then you go about your day. And so for me, I said, well, okay, I want to figure out a way to build wealth. Could I get some extra cash flow at the time?
Yeah.
And so we bought our first rental property for $120,000. I found it on Zillow in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
The mortgage payments now at this time.
How many units was that?
It was just a single family home, rent ready, in just a working class neighborhood.
Which is the best.
Yeah, and so we bought our first one. Our mortgage payment $600 a month. It rents for $1,300.
Wow, smart, and it's appreciated since.
It has, yeah. I mean,
it's not Bay Area,
but for $25,000 in,
but they're paying it off, and then you got something to give to your two beautiful children. So,
and then I said, wait a minute, we're net cash flow $400-something a month after saving for vacancy and maintenances.
Yeah. And I want to add to that, Josh, and you know this well. I just want to point it out to the audience. The investment Josh made does not make him or break him. So if that tenant does not pay for 6 months, you're not freaking out. And maybe in Ohio, the rule is if they don't pay for X amount of months, you get a sheriff in right away. Like in Florida, for example, if you don't pay rent, they're out that month. And not in California, which is the worst place to invest in real estate for what you're talking about, especially in San Francisco, which is by far the worst place in the country, in my opinion, to be a real estate investor. And I have personal experience to that. But am I right? You could kick them out?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
good.
30 days notice, and then we're going to eviction court.
And it's fast.
And
sheriff comes right in.
Yes. So when it comes to long-term rentals, it is definitely the more conservative states that I invest in.
Okay.
But I love California and I love to live here. So.
Yeah, sure. But that's okay. You could own property. A lot of people, do all that. So you bought your first single family home. The payment wasn't too much per month for you. You could afford it. It was a safer investment. You explained to your nice dad that this is a good move. When you explained that to him, what did he say?
I mean, there was two kind of triggers there.
Okay.
The first one, or unlocks, I guess might be the better word. When he saw how much an actual mortgage payment is today, he said, "Oh, I don't know if that does make a lot of sense." Yes, here.
Yeah.
And we all knew that we didn't want to move away from family.
Yeah. And he's not moving.
No, he's never moving. At this point, he bought his house in the 90s. He's never moving.
I've seen some people buy their houses in like the 70s, and it's crazy.
I mean, property tax, anyways, all of that.
By the way, property tax. So, we talked about the mortgage payment. That might include the property tax payment. But oftentimes people don't realize that as well. In the Bay Area, you buy a home, your mortgage payment is $6-7 grand, but your property tax is like 30 or 20 grand at the end of the year. Two payments, of course, and you're freaking out because that you haven't planned for it. The Bay Area is a different animal, and you're not getting the Taj Mahal or what you see Michael Jordan have in Atlanta, Georgia, out here for that price. You know what I mean? Or Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois. Excuse me. You're getting a shack that needs remodeling, and there's probably mold in the walls, and it's sad. So
that's 100% true. The first house that I bought, was actually nicer than the $1.1, $1.2 million houses that we were looking to buy for ourselves.
Yeah. So funny.
So location is obviously relative, but for that unlock, it was, hey, Dad, I don't want to get chained to $8,000 a month as just an overhead for my roof.
Yeah.
And also, look at all of these numbers.
Yeah.
And say the worst case scenario does happen. You're vacant for a year. You have a crazy maintenance that costs $10,000. Like you said before, I did have runway in the bank, and my advice that I tell people is whatever your nest egg is to start investing, spend half of that.
Smart.
And then that way you have the other half of a whoopsies.
Yep.
So whatever else happens, you can cover it. And if that ends up just being a cost of education, then I guess you had some continued education tuition that you paid the man.
I agree. I made a video in the past on that, just on my YouTube channel, that says how much money should you have for emergencies or, these fail-safe plans. And to be honest with you, with the way things go, I would even multiply now that since the time I made that video.
Yeah.
So that was your first property. What about investing in your second property?
Yeah.
Was that also in Ohio, or is it okay? So how many properties do you have in Ohio?
So we have 8 long-term rentals, 4 short-term or mid-term rentals, and then a 111-unit complex in Dallas.
111 units. And how many partners do you have with that, or is it just you?
Technically, there are 6 general partners and 87 limited partners.
Okay, so are you crowdfunding these investments? Or?
That one was a syndication.
Okay,
so the journey from, hey, I'm going to buy this $120,000 house in Columbus, Ohio, to then being part of a $10 million raise to buy a $19 million apartment complex in Dallas it's been a fun one.
Yeah,
and that has been largely based off of networking and podcasting.
Okay, really?
Yeah, I attribute
so
that all
how
to
did you?
podcasting.
So when you went on the podcast, you said, "This is what I'm doing. Who's interested? Hit me up." Or
not even that. I mean, so I've from the clothing brand days and the gym days, I've always been into marketing, content marketing.
Sure.
Obviously, if I ran ads better back then, I probably would have sold more T-shirts.
Okay.
But again, lessons learned through the way. But at least my organic content I knew was pretty decent for the time.
Okay.
And I said, well, hey, I'm starting this new journey. One of my biggest regrets ever was in Hawaii. I used to vlog weekly about owning a gym or owning a clothing brand in Hawaii and then working out. And at that point, I was decently competitive. And I did 10 episodes and I stopped.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do that again with real estate. And I said, well, what if I just kept going?
Okay.
Because who knows what could happen? And so for me, I then took that lesson learned and I just said, well, I'm just going to document every single one of my deals. I don't care how good or how bad the video is. My first YouTube video back in, I plugged the mic into the wrong port.
I've had that.
And I still posted it. I didn't retake it. I just posted it.
Did you talk over it or voice over it?
No, I just posted it. Like you could hear it. It was faint. A lot of feedback, all this stuff.
I see.
And I posted it. And actually now, being a few hundred videos of just YouTube videos in, it is nice to have that story and just
So you have a few hundred, I didn't know, so you have a few hundred YouTube videos as well.
Yeah, it's up there now.
Okay.
And it makes it a lot easier to have the numbers up with shorts now too, right?
Okay,
so,
yeah.
But long-term videos, I think I'm at, if I include the podcast, I'm probably at like 120 like long-form above 10-minute videos.
That's a lot. That means you're very committed to it. I mean, to get over... I think earlier we talked about it off camera, 30 videos is like that threshold or something before you continue doing it. And I've seen people just quit it because the pay even off YouTube is not that much. And realistically, unless you're like the top, whoever's out there and you guys know them. But I think you like doing this personally, the vlogging and the YouTubes and Instagram, et cetera. And I don't much like the video aspect of it, but I enjoy meeting people that just tickle my brain and say, hey, wow, I didn't think of this. This is great. That part I love. So that's why I do it.
Yeah.
And I think you do it too for whatever, why do you do it? Why do you do it? Tell me, what's your passion from it?
Well, okay, good. Because I was actually going to make a clip after this about why I came onto your podcast.
Why did you come onto my podcast? Because you never met me.
No.
And I don't know if you checked out, I don't know how many subscribers you have on, I know you have more followers on Instagram than I do by a lot. I don't really engage on there that much. It's more of like, I don't know, I probably just talk smack between buddies on there, here and there. And, but why did you come on to my podcast or the show, for example?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast or jumping into a new business or wants to meet more people, if you were to cold DM someone and say, hey, can I pick your brains?
Yeah.
You either will probably ignore it or, hey, sorry, I don't have any time right now. My priorities don't align.
Yeah.
But if someone said, hey, can you be a guest on my podcast? And at this point for me, I also say, I also cut up clips for you. And I will, I'll even post it for you or whatever it is. And you can reach people who are more senior in the space than you, all because now, regardless of how big or how small the audience is, you can now be a tool to them instead of just saying, well, you're just going to take from me.
Yeah. It's a great networking way. And you know what? I've had people that either I or secretary or my assistants, EAs reached out to be on the podcast. Some people have funny responses. Some people ignore it. A lot of people are interested. At first, when I built this studio, and you would say it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I was like, who's going to come on? Who's going to, how am I going to get guests on here? I don't know that many people. I just went down this list, and a lot of people said yes from my list. But then a lot of people they love coming on and talking about their experiences. I feel like I was surprised by how many people actually do want to come on a podcast. It's very interesting. And I'm glad you decided to come on because I like your energy. And I do agree with you. That it's good to always kind of do something above what you normally do in the day. Like this opportunity could lead to another opportunity, could lead to another opportunity. You never know. Shaking hands with people that are trying to do more is like such a benefit, right? And you would agree with that, correct?
Oh, 100%. That's been, I mean, there's other talks or meetups that I'll talk at. It's the tagline is from zero to, $21 million in real estate managed in less than 2 years.
Crazy.
And that was the trajectory, but it was all through networking and podcasting and just leveling up the conversations.
I need to now start investing with you in Ohio. It sounds like now I'm looking into it. As real estate investment goes, I do have a lot of experience, but only in the Bay Area.
Okay.
But to acquire properties in the Bay Area, it's not easy at all. I mean, like this building is ours, but it's not cheap, and then I feel like you can really do some great damage somewhere else at a much safer investment given their laws and local laws, and get more properties and get more units and really build up. So I'm proud of you. That's like, if I was to sit here and tell you that's not interesting to me, it'd be a flat out lie. I think everyone that's successful on some level goes, how do I buy so many units? Where do I start with 1 unit? Do I start with 6? And maybe you could tell the audience here, if you're a mid-size or small-size business owner looking to buy maybe their first property, should they look at 4 units, or should they go commercial status and get 5 units and get that commercial tag on it? Or should they go and get what they could afford? Like, what would you say?
I think it all depends on, one, their goals and how active they want to be.
Okay.
So if someone has an excess amount of money and just wants to park cash, they probably just want to be more passive.
Okay.
And so there's a million different ways that you could invest into a syndication, into a fund, whatever it may be, and now have ownership rights into the property without having to pick up the phone with an Airbnb and say, hey, your hot tub's broken.
Yeah, the bathroom's leaking.
Happens to us every single weekend.
Yeah.
And so...
That's funny.
If you're
for 111 units, I would imagine so.
Well, that one's actually easier.
Really?
Yeah. So if you, just because there are systems for scaling.
Okay.
And so usually at around a 70 unit threshold, if it's one apartment building, at that point you can have a full-time leasing agent or a full-time maintenance person on staff, and then your gross rents can cover their salaries.
I see.
And so
you
now,
have to have somebody else.
And so you're not the first point of contact anymore. And most times too, if you're buying an apartment complex or a multifamily property, you're probably then, especially if it's out of state, you have to hire an out-of-state property manager, and they're usually the first line of defense on that. But if it's an Airbnb, that's different.
How much would you pay an out-of-state property manager?
Most people will do anywhere between, I'd say, like 8 and 12% of gross rents.
Okay, of gross rents.
If it's smaller.
Okay.
But then if you have an on-site full-time property manager, you're probably paying the average salary of a full-time employee for that region.
Okay, for that area.
Yeah.
So you're basically, maybe a little more just to keep them on board and not having to keep cycle them.
Yeah.
With your properties in remote, do you have someone on site there? And what I mean by remote, I mean in, say, Ohio or in Dallas, depending on your level of ownership, of course. I don't know how you make the decisions, but typically, let's say it's a 10 plus unit. Should an owner be nearby that area, or you just have a property management company deal with it?
I have never been to a property before I bought it.
You're kidding.
But also, I started in COVID, and I was deathly afraid to fly.
Wow. You know, I flew during COVID. It was the best experiences I've had in flying. There? Nobody was there. I swear to God, I got on an airplane. There was, I think it was me and another person in the full airplane. It felt like we were, it was like a movie. I have a video out on it on the YouTube channel. It was freaking freaky. I'm like, with my picture with my mask, and then there's the whole empty plane behind me, and I'm like, this is a commercial flight. This is insane. But I loved it. It was so quiet. No line. You walk right through. But okay, so you've never been to a property. You bought these properties. Mm-hmm. Were you nervous doing that type of transaction? I mean...
Yes. I mean, and then just to maybe put in your perspective, like, for example, if someone said, hey, like, what's your daily rate?
Yeah.
What would you price it at? Would it be more than $1,000?
It depends for what.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem with me is I don't like charging people for my time. And that someone that's coming on the podcast, David Metzler, okay. I don't know his name, last name, I apologize. He's like, at one point in life, I realized that whatever I do, I need to charge for it or something like this. And I haven't. My daily rate, it's more than $1,000 if it was a serious like conversation. But I never, if you call me tomorrow, Josh, and we met today, and you say, hey, I need you at my house to help me out, can you please come? I'm the type of guy, as long as we're not killing anybody, with your karate with your MMA skills and my limited jiu-jitsu skills, I'll be there. I'll help you out. You know, if you said, hey, help me set up a studio, because you were, before this video recording, you were talking about that. I don't mind helping you. I'm not going to charge you a daily rate. That's not what I'm about.
But my rationale behind that question, and I mean, I still do the same, right?
But like, what is the rationale? I'm curious.
Yeah, the rationale behind that is there was one, like it was COVID, so it made it easier to make that rationale.
Sure.
But also, I would probably it'd be a day of travel.
I think to add to that is if you don't know that person, there needs to be a daily rate.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So the daily rate.
And so, but it would be a day of travel, and then probably I would have a full day of looking at properties, because you wouldn't waste that travel plus the cost of travel and the time to not do multiple things.
Of course.
Then another day back.
Yep.
Right? And how many properties could I look at before I then would fly back? I don't know, maybe 10 at the most, and that's like pushing it.
Yeah.
If you were just like grinding
knocking them out.
But in order for me to really analyze a deal well, I analyzed 192 short-term rentals before I actually bought our first one. And I could not do that if I was flying out there every single time.
For a novice like me, I kind of get the idea of a short-term rental. But give us an example of the difference between a short-term rental and some of the other investments that you made. So what is a short-term rental?
Yeah. So your short-term rental is, I mean, and generically, it's your Airbnb VRBO stay.
Got it.
So someone's going to go for the weekend to hang out with their friends in Lake Tahoe. They're probably going to book an Airbnb.
Yep.
And so for most people, you spend a lot more on vacations than you do on the house that's above that you sleep in every single day. And so depending on the market, you can make significantly more money.
Got it. Yep, of course, because you're really multiplying. You're basically a little hotel. But who handles all the short-term rental cleanings? Because you're far away. You can't get out there when they mess up the house, or they happen to leave a pee stain on the floor before your next guest. So who does that? Is that also that property management company, or? No.
So for that one, all the short-term rentals we manage ourselves in-house, and then we sub out the work.
When you say you manage in-house, but they're in Ohio.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So like a guest comes and say, hey, we are out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Or this doesn't work.
You Uber them toilet paper?
I Instacart them toilet paper and maybe some sparkling waters and some treats as a sorry. Here's a hospitality gift.
It's really neat.
Right. And then for the cleaning, I'm sure you've booked on Airbnb before.
Yeah.
And you pay a cleaning fee. That's actually a pass-through cost.
I see.
Meaning Airbnb tells the owner, they're teaching you how to run the business, you should hire a cleaner because we're already charging the guest a cleaning fee. And then that way, you don't have to be the one scrubbing the toilets and changing the sheets.
Yeah. Very good. So let's talk about short-term rentals. I really like this topic, and I love that you have this experience on it. With short-term rentals, what do you look for? Is it near a lake? Is it near a casino? Is it, you know what I mean? What made you buy those short-term rentals, or what would you look for? What should the audience look for in a short-term rental?
Totally. Okay. And again, it all goes back to what your goal is. If the end goal is just making money, or do you also want to use it for your family?
Okay. If like to use it as in you got a Lake Tahoe, guys. Lake Tahoe's beautiful. You got a Lake Tahoe, but you're also using as a short-term rental to offset your costs. And these are $2 million properties or whatever, $1 million. And you're using it as your family every other weekend.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it depends on what your goal is.
Okay. Let's say it's investment, strictly investment. What would you do?
And at that point, if you're listening to this in the Bay Area, good luck. You should invest somewhere else. So you have to go out of the area now at this point.
Sure.
And
soon we'll be short-term renting 600 square feet in like these little huts they're building. But
the tiny home.
Yeah, the tiny home with Elon Musk's little poster board on the wall. But let's say out of the Bay Area, let's say somewhere someone could afford, such as Ohio, maybe in the middle of nowhere somewhere else. Or maybe even outside of Tahoe. I don't know if you know, like Lake Tahoe's gorgeous, one of my favorite places. My dream is to have a place there, but I almost did during COVID. But let's say if you go like 40 minutes outside of Lake Tahoe, you can actually get a really nice cabin.
Yeah.
You're not on the lake, but let's say, what would you recommend? What are the people looking for?
All right. So if you are looking for your first short-term rental, this is the easiest thing to do. This is not sponsored, by the way. But there's two websites. You can go to data.rabu.com or airdna.co.
Okay.
And from there, it'll pull in all the Airbnbs or VRBOs in the area. And then you can aggregate the data and say, hey, I'm only looking at 4-bedroom houses in Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
And it'll pull in all the rentals, and it'll also pull in what the gross bookings were historically from each of those listings.
For the year?
For the year. Or for the, and it'll do by seasonality
do whatever
too.
You want. Wow, by season, by
and of
holidays.
Course, the more data you want, then you got to start paying for the...
I see.
And then from there, you just say, cool, this house could generate $120,000 gross per year. What are my monthly expenses? 9 times out of 10, if your monthly expenses, including the mortgage, are less than 50%, you should probably buy that deal.
Interesting.
There's a lot more, this is not financial advice, but that's where I would start.
By the way, guys, not financial advice. There's already on our YouTube a disclaimer, but this is experience, and you do your own research. Your short-term rentals, do you use them sometimes, or is it just investment?
We have used one.
Okay. With your family?
Yes. Okay. And that's also because we used a second home loan.
Okay.
So you can... If you intend to use it, no,
you can't.
I don't have a primary home. I still rent here in the Bay Area because again, I don't want to pay. Now it's $10,000, $12,000 a month.
Yeah. You're saying, why am I paying this interest? Basically, interest up in the beginning is mostly all interest, especially in that curvature of the 30-year mortgage.
Yeah,
and you're like, hey, I'll just take it and invest and let them pay off my future house in the future or whatever.
The cash flow then pays for my rent.
Yeah. So, or your mortgage in the future if you get to that level or whatever it is.
Yes, although I don't know. At this point, eventually I'll have a nice house in the hills where you buy that, but that'll be when you have stupid money.
So we're gonna have to talk about why you feel renting is better. But continue with the short-term rental. Okay. You have used it once. My thing is with the short-term rentals, and people are like, well, why don't you just buy a place in Tahoe? It'll help you get the loan because you could show short-term income or even any income. Can you show short-term income?
You have to have it for 2 years.
2 years.
So you have to have it for 2 years for it to then apply onto your income to then increase. But
there actually, technically, yes, with a big term lender. But there are lenders out there that will go around that if you get a new renting contract. There are some private lenders.
Yes, or you can do a DSCR loan, and then there are some off of Airbnb income too.
Yeah. They'll get creative. Yeah. They get creative. There are. We should note to the audience, the Chase or whoever is out there, they're going to say, hey, 2 years, get it out of here. We're not going to give you this jumbo loan or whatever. But for me, I've never been the type of guy like they would. If you rent a place, just like if you let a buddy drive your Mustang. He's going to try to push that car or Porsche. He's going to whip it around the corner. There are people that come into your short-term rentals. I'm sure they damage it. Yes, there's protection, right, with Airbnbs.
And air cover on Airbnb is great, by the way.
So you had to have you filed claims with them before?
Multiple times.
And it's been covered with the repair bill, the new toilet, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, good. So do you think, this is you giving advice to me now.
Okay.
And I haven't given you advice, but I'm curious for this advice. Would a short-term rental, say in Lake Tahoe, be a good idea, knowing that there's Airbnb coverage? And I would buy it. I'd short-term rent it. I know they're going to damage it. It's inevitable, right? It's like a 12-year-old driving or 16-year-old driving a car, 12-year-old. 16-year-old driving a car. They're going to scratch it. They're going to hit the pole coming around the corner one day or whatever. Do you think it's a smart investment long-term for saying, hey, the person's going to damage this home. They're going to scratch up my floor. They're going to break the bathrooms. They're going to do this. I could file one big claim, or you can't file a one big claim. You can. Doesn't this kind of give you that house eventually that you want, right? You get what I'm getting to, right?
So here's why for you, you might consider it. And obviously, if you own this building, then you have a significant amount of income.
Yeah.
But there's not many different ways that you can offset a high income.
Yeah.
If you bought a long-term rental, you can't offset your active income with that long-term rental income. Even if it has property depreciation, you're keeping that in there for a passive gain to offset.
Yep.
Right? But on a short-term rental basis, it's now a hospitality business.
Interesting.
And so, for example, let's just say, and we're going to get a little deep here, but this is just for you. So I'll keep it super summary.
I appreciate it.
Have you ever done a cost segregation study before?
I have not.
Okay, so, and you actually have a commercial property, so you might be able to do it with this one too.
Oh, actually, you know what? They offered it here. They did. I remember. I didn't want to pay for it. It was like a certain amount of pretty hefty fee they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how big the unit is. This one, I don't know how big this is. But for example, for an average short-term rental, if you were buy a single-family home on the lake, you're probably spending around $3,000 to $4,000 for that study.
Yeah.
For an engineer to come out. And what is in the tax code, right, is on a rental property, you can, depending on how you classify it, you can either depreciate the value of the structure itself over 27 and a half years or 35 years.
Okay.
Right, on a commercial basis. But with the bonus depreciation that everyone's talking about of how I wrote off my Tesla Model X and yada, yada, you could do the same on a house. And so if you have a hospitality business, say you bought that house in Lake Tahoe for $1 million, and you did a cost segregation. And so they looked at the house and they said, okay, hey, your land is this big, your structure is here, and the walls are worth this much, the sink's worth this much, your shower, your couch, your TVs, you put in the best Sonos sound system.
I like Sonos.
And all of that can get depreciated on year one. And in 2023, you can bonus depreciate up to 80% of whatever they tally up.
Wow.
And in some instances, on our one Joshua Tree Airbnb, we got $80,000 of write-offs in year one.
Wow.
So here's what that means for the viewer is, if I'm going to keep numbers easy, if I made $100,000 at my day job, and now I have this active loss of $80,000, my effective net income is $20,000.
Yep. But in reality, you got this prime real property with all these nice new things inside.
And that is the best hack to write off against your active income is the short-term rental cost segregation tax loophole.
Interesting. How important is a good CPA in regards to what you just described? Because, there's people that know the real estate, they know the rental, but a lot of CPAs or even accountants don't, either know it or don't suggest it to you as a strategy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
My CPA, I actually now co-host a tax podcast with my CPA.
You're kidding.
I do. He's one of my clients.
Okay.
And he said, hey, can you help me make content and can we do a podcast? But he's not as energetic as me.
Yeah.
And so I said, sure, you're the only one that I will co-host a podcast with.
Okay.
But I also picked him because he also invests himself.
I see. So I guess the point here, guys, is if you're going to pick a CPA or if this is what you're interested in, or it could be something else, in fact, it could be different type of investments, see if your CPA actually does it himself because he's learned some lessons in that journey, right? Okay. So he does it.
So throw it back to you, though.
Yeah.
If you can have your Lake Tahoe house paid for and also have a $200,000 write-off, would you do it?
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
And then at the end of the day, I'd know that I'm replacing what's in there that doesn't feel mine because 100 people used it or 1,000 people used it. Some people are okay with that. They're okay with, hey, I got this couch off Craigslist. It's probably 20 years old. It's gotten some use to it. I'm not that type of guy. Every property I've owned, it's been remodeled to my liking, to my taste, to my detail. And it's all thought through with a lot of sleepless kind of nights. But you and I will talk about this, Josh. I was going to say Josh, later because I'm curious. Maybe I'll have to meet your CPA. All right. So we've covered quite a few things here. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a real estate investor? And I think we'll need to get into your podcast after because this is interesting and I think people should follow you for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
The biggest challenges for a real estate investor today, I think, is the shiny object syndrome. So going back to at the very beginning, you said, you're all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part is that today information is so accessible. You have people who randomly done it before will just spew it for free on a platform.
Or haven't done it.
Yeah,
that's even worse. And that's a lot of people.
And so information is so readily available that, I could buy a short-term rental. I could also buy a long-term rental. What if I also did this?
Yeah.
Self-storage. All these different asset classes are so now more available than ever that if you have a little bit of capital, it is hard to pick one. If you don't have a lot of money, you just have to find ways to get the first initial nest egg to get started.
Understood. So focus maybe on something, make sure it goes well, and then roll that into a potential branch out or stick close to what you're doing initially. Maybe get a 2-unit instead of a 1-unit and keep that kind of going and going. Very good advice. Thank you for that. Do you think your marketing skills helped in any way with any of your rental or real estate investments?
Yes. You've had a marketing agency before.
I did.
If no one knows what you're doing, how can you ever scale your business?
Yeah.
And for me, it's, we're just investing on the side because everyone says that if you own real estate, eventually you'll get rich. Whether I bought a single-family house every single year for the next 30 years, after 30 years, I'd have a decent amount of net worth in the bank.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was the original plan.
To carry over to your children, it leads to a foundation after where now they get to manage for good causes but still collect money. There's tax benefits in those. So, you put those properties in foundations. It's a good question coming up here, sticking with real estate again, but are your properties in LLCs, I would imagine, that you're doing all short-term rentals, all longer-term rentals, and your multi-units LLC for each property, I would imagine.
Not each property, but I have some will maybe have a couple properties
here
inside
and couple
there.
Here.
Yeah.
I always, been told each property should have one. If you're depends on the scale or how worried you are. But that's good to have. Even guys, if if you do get your first property, just create an LLC in that state. Create an LLC in a different state, even if you want to hold an LLC in that state, so you could really get protective with assets. Because a lot of, and Josh, you would probably attest to this, is if something bad does happen, God forbid, you run over somebody with a truck or something, they find out you have 10 properties or whatever, they're coming after it. These ambulance chasing lawyers, and the sweet James that we keep seeing everywhere. So LLCs help. So you're putting them in, or you have one ready.
Yes.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast. Okay. You have a podcast. I had a little bit of a brief to it. I looked at your Instagram profile. I said, this guy's interested in contact. I believe I initially reached out to you myself, then my EA reached out to you to schedule it. Thank you for coming again. You do a great job on there. Your energy's great. What made you want to start a podcast? Tell the audience.
Yeah, for me, it was, again, documenting the journey, regardless of however it was. And my podcast is called The Cash Flow Happy Hour.
Thank you.
And so it's all things investing. And at this point now, I'm branching out more so from just real estate investing, but a little bit more into the finance space. Just how are you increasing your cash flow.
So basically focusing on cash flow, let's raise it. And how are you doing it?
And I mean, it's a catchy name too, right?
Yeah,
So that's
I really
fun.
like it.
Thank you.
I like happy hour. I like cash flow.
Eventually, we'll have some, liquor or wine sponsor or something, and we can send out gifts to all the guests.
He'll be the proper 12 happy hour.
Conor McGregor, okay.
I actually know someone that I guess is his business partner. Small world. It's kind of crazy. But so the cash flow happy hour focuses on increasing cash flow. Are you the main person, or do you get guests on there that talk about how they increase their cash flow?
Always guests.
Okay, always.
Always guests. I actually do it live on YouTube while I record.
Wow. Have you ever had an instance where something was said live that...
I've never had anything that's been like from a guest or from myself saying that was too crazy that we go into. But I've had, obviously, like when you're live, you get random, adult comments here and there. Or spam links of like, click this XXX thing. And you're like, man, I need to
those bots,
block.
Yeah, you're like, no. YouTube does nothing to control that, by the way. I've had when I first was starting to do YouTube, people would take my icon picture, and then they would create fake accounts, and they'd contact me on WhatsApp for invest advice and this and that. And I was freaking out. People would call me like, bro, did you contact me to give investment advice? No, don't send them any money. If you're going to send anyone money, send it to me. But I had to make a video saying don't contact me. Curious, you mentioned your Instagram and your podcast name. Is that the same name on YouTube as well?
My channel, the podcast, if you look it up on YouTube, it would be the Casual Happy Hour, but it's also nestled under my name, Joshua _ Baldovino. Okay. Both on.
And how many subscribers do you have on YouTube? I haven't checked.
Yeah, YouTube's about 9,000, 9,000 on Instagram, and then 16 on TikTok.
Good for you, man. That you're all around platforms. That's very good. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing running a podcast? Like, is this more of a retirement thing for you? Because you seem to be, what impression I'm getting is you're a long-term investor. Like, these properties are long-term investments. You're not, when you tell someone I'm going to put a large chunk of money, do a lot of paperwork, find the property, do the analytical market research, which is available to us nowadays, to really get $400 a month. To some, that's nothing. You're not thinking about that, though. It's not the $400 that's pushing you. It's the end goal. Yeah. So what's your end goal? Is it a retirement thing?
I mean, the podcast for me is a platform to meet people, whether it be investors or at this point, a little under a year ago, I started a marketing agency helping other people create content too. Okay. And, after producing so many episodes and so many shorts, they said, hey, I like your videos. How the heck are you doing it? All right. So at this point, I brought on my best friend who's a videographer. And so he's my project manager. We now have 5 VAs, and we're only producing marketing, both organic or paid ads for people in the finance or investing space.
In the Bay Area or remote?
Remote.
Okay. And how's that going?
It's good. Yeah. I actually make more doing that now for the first time ever than in my day job.
Really? Yeah. Oh, very good. So you're basically... Let's say not me, but let's say me. You're getting guys like me if they have something to offer to sell, like a consulting or whatever. You're creating a lot of content from them. You're making the content very beneficial to them, beneficial to the viewers, more catchy with more pizzazz, so to say. Yeah. And then they're pushing it out there. Are you also posting it for them?
I also post it for them.
Okay, so you're really managing their
We're the outsourced social media manager. From research to scripting to plugging the hooks. Okay. And then either myself or someone else will interview them live while we record them. Yeah. And then if they say something interesting, we say, hey, stop, actually give me this hook instead.
Wow.
Actually, and give me this other one too. And sometimes we'll run, 4 or 5 different variations of it just to see which one hits.
A good one. And then or good one on as far as what gets picked up on Instagram? Or
yeah, I mean, but again, virality doesn't really mean it's going to generate dollars.
Yeah.
So you could have a clip that does 500,000 views.
But you didn't get many leads from it or whatever.
But you could have a video that has 500 views, but all of a sudden you just sold, 2 $5,000 courses.
So interesting how that is, by the way. People tend to think it's a numbers game. I've always thought that myself as well, but sometimes you can meet someone off a video that's not getting any views, and then you could have 1 million views and nobody really cares at the end or reaches out. It's kind of weird. Or you could likewise have a lot of engagement in the comments because of the controversy, but then that leads to more views. I don't know. Okay, that's cool. So how do you manage, Josh, having a podcast, another podcast that talks about taxes? And by the way, the tax podcast is probably going to catch on. That's needed, in my opinion, if you combine a real estate mind or a really good investor. So that's going to be great for you. But how do you manage one podcast, two podcasts, a media company, managing other companies and other people, real estate, and then you also have a day job? What's your day job?
I do marketing for a winery.
You do market. So you're officially an employee of a winery. Do you want to say the winery name?
I'll skip it for this one.
No problem. I do like wine. They're in the Bay Area, I would imagine. Yeah. Very good. And then how do you manage your time in doing all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've leveraged VAs a lot, systematized a lot of things. And also for the deliverables your day job is your day job.
Sure.
Right. And whether you're project-based or hourly-based, it kind of just depends. And then as you move into anyone who's looking to start a side hustle, for me, after having these different business experiences, I wanted to find something that if I scaled and added another client, that it wouldn't add more than an hour or two a month for me, but hopefully it would add, a few $1,000s in revenue per month.
Okay. So an hour, $1,000? I'm just doing the math. It's not bad.
Of my actual active working time. But, if you're cutting down 30 clips, but you're hiring VAs to do that and project manage and the research before that.
I believe the way you do it is you get the people in, you make sure it's done properly, they do the legwork, you review it, you then lay off the project once you feel a little bit comfortable or a lot comfortable that they could do it on the professional level you're expecting it. And that's how you're scaling that, because then you're focusing on the next client to make sure it's perfect. And then if there's a problem, you come back and put it out in fire.
Yes.
But you also have a family. Do you see them often? Or?
I do. So the schedule for me is, my kids are young. They're 5 and 2. And so the morning is I do morning drop-offs most of the week and then do the day job. Okay. And then from there...
Is the day job in person or...
No, it's remote.
Okay, that helps a lot.
It does.
Okay.
And then my kid does jiu-jitsu.
He does? Where?
At Heroes.
Okay. My brother-in-law trains there in San Jose.
Okay, yeah. Which one in San Jose?
Oh, it's at a big mall. There's a Target there.
Okay, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. I went there, trained one time. They're pretty good there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like them a lot. Yeah. And then from there, it's family time from the time he gets out from school to about 7:30. Yeah. And then they're showered, and then that's the kids' iPad time after 7:30 and for the next 30 minutes before they go to sleep. We put them in bed, and then the laptop opens up from 8:30 to midnight.
I know that pain. Does your wife not want to watch a movie with you or anything like that?
She does, and this was something that we've definitely been working through. Okay. Of hey, we're not going to watch this Netflix show today now, right? Or whatever it is. But she knows that, well, one, I want to make a lot more than we're making now. Yeah. And what are the sacrifices that we were both willing to be on the same page as?
So, this is something I want to dig deeper into, not because I don't have a good balance, but there's another podcast guy that's coming on from the Bay Area as well. And him and I off camera one time talked about the vision for your significant other to make sure it aligns with yours. And when I say yours, it was his at that time, obviously. But how important is it that you have an understanding wife or an understanding partner to allow you that 3 hours to 4 hours at night away from the relationship that you could be spending watching Real Housewives of Miami or whatever to do what you need to do? How important is it that you have an encouraging partner?
That is everything. Okay. Especially if I can go back, I remember starting the clothing brand. I was single at the time, not married, and I can couch surf. And if a business meeting came up and at night said, "Hey, I want to get drinks after work, and you can potentially help me with the business," I went out at 9:30, no questions asked. I can't do that anymore. Yeah. Right. I stay inside and I still work, but it was the expectation of hey, I want to do all this. Can you give me a set amount of time, 2 years, 3 years of runway? And I still make it a point though. Like there are set date nights where it's like, we're going to hire a sitter.
Good for you guys.
We're going here.
Yeah.
Because if I don't still give her that, then what life am I living in the meantime?
Yeah.
And I don't want that.
Yeah, and you know what? It tends to crack. It becomes more of a transactional relationship than a loving relationship. So I'm glad you set. So I guess, guys, set time with your significant other to show your appreciation, right?
Yeah.
Of them allowing you to do what you do, and then it becomes a scheduling thing with your other work, and then she has to, or he, depending on who's what, oblige or work together. I would say it's probably just as important as having a good business partner, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier in the podcast, is like when you have a business partner, you're kind of married or you're kind of dating in a relationship. Well, technically, the person in your home, in your bed, is your business, is your partner in everything that you do, including your businesses. So they're like the government in some sense. You're still giving them some money. They're giving you some money back, or I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like it's like a third partner in every relationship. And you kind of brought that up is, hey, if I have a business partner, I want to know who they're dating or whatever you said, their marriage, or they're going to get a divorce, or what their finances are like. And all of that's reflective of who they're with as well. Because if they have, you know, you could take an example. If they have a crazy spending wife or a gambling husband, you know what I mean? This is affecting your finances at the end if you're in a partnership. All right. So, you know, Josh, we got to go back to the part about real estate where you're like, hey, I'm renting right now. So what advice would you give someone should they own or should they rent? That's like the biggest question a lot of families face, a lot of newlyweds, a lot of people in the home, including the parents, encourage rent because I think so many fathers and mothers have retired based on their rental income, but their strategies were never thinking of, let me acquire many smaller properties to pay off and balloon in payments, and that'll be my retirement, or the transaction money will flow to my retirement eventually. So tell us, rent or own, and what's your take on that?
I mean, again, it always goes back to someone's financial situation.
Sure.
And 9 times out of 10, it probably starts at where they're based and where they want to live. So if you're in an area, let's take the Bay Area, let's take San Jose, where you can rent a decent home in a neighborhood for $3,000 to $4,000. That same exact house that's next door for sale, your mortgage payment after property tax would probably be $12,000 to $13,000 for the same exact home. Great. That $10,000 delta, one is not forced on you. The other one, you have signed to a lender saying that I will give you $13,000 per month.
For a long time.
And the first few years, you're 99.9% of that is just interest anyways.
Yep.
So you're getting appreciation, but you're not actually getting principal pay down.
Yep.
So depending on your financial situation, for me, I don't feel comfortable chalking at $15,000 per month right now.
Yeah.
Eventually, I like to get to that point where I don't care about that extra $15,000 and where it goes to, but I'm not there yet.
I see. So for maybe someone that you're saying is not ultra rich or has cushy parents with lots of money or whatever helping out, they're not looking to park money. A lot of Asian investors park money in the Bay Area, specifically in Silicon Valley and these nice neighborhoods where they bring in and buy cash. It's maybe safer. Russian people do that in Miami where they don't want it in their country or they want a visa. You know, there's these laws. You're saying it's better maybe to rent, save that $10,000 a month and have an opportunity to invest that $10,000 in a potentially smart way. You're basically getting an additional income of $10,000 a month to play with it in whichever way you want to really grow that $10,000 into much more than the mortgage company just collecting it from you.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask any financial advisor, they're probably going to say limit your amount of monthly obligations.
Yeah.
And in this specific instance, nothing will come close to your housing expense in the Bay Area.
I know, it's crazy.
But if you were in Columbus, Ohio, and if you were to rent my $1,300 a month for that house or have a mortgage payment in today's interest rates of $1,100,
Now it
you
makes
should
sense.
buy.
Yeah.
But if you're here in the Bay Area, I don't know.
It seems like a major multiplier for whatever reason, from rent to own. It's just crazy. But also in the Bay Area, what can happen in that year or 2 years is you could make $200,000 right back in your property, which means you got, $100,000 minus what you've paid to the mortgage or the interest.
Do you think it's really going to go? How much higher do you think it's going to go?
Oh, dude, it's insane. I never thought. It's a great question. I never thought prices would go so high as they have. How much higher can they go? There has to be a top, like a Sunset home in the San Francisco area. I think 2 to 2.5 mil max. We're seeing them around 1.7, 1.8. If you asked me that same question 10 years ago, would I think a Sunset home would ever reach 1.7 million? Say, hell no. Why? The weather's not good, et cetera. It's if the population keeps increasing and if there's in these areas, they could
salaries
go,
have to match the same.
I know. It's crazy. We just, this is such a complex question though, because we live in such a weird microclimate of real estate that
and income.
And income. And these tech companies are paying employees through the roof. That's why it's so hard to employ people in the Bay Area, because they're expecting the meal. They're expecting a 5-star chef. They're expecting their income to be 40% higher than what you could pay. Yeah. And they're expecting to work less. And at the same time, they're expecting to maybe have a second job while they sit at home. There's just so many different aspects. Could it go higher? Yes. But how much higher? I don't know. I can't answer. I would say maybe not much, but I said that before, and it's gotten higher. I've seen Atherton, for example, which is near you, go from when I saw $7-8 million homes. Now those homes are like $28 million. And for some reason, somebody's buying it.
But see, ultra luxury, I think there's always a market for ultra luxury. Yeah. And whether it be your travel space, Airbnb space, there's always a market for ultra luxury. But you think about the average home price, which means that average salaries will have to float from...
But even San Jose went so much higher in comparison. I think it's one of the most highest in the nation.
And then what would be the mortgage of a $3 million home that's your normal 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square feet? Like a $3 million home.
12, 14 grand right now?
No, it'd be more than that. It'd be close to $20,000.
$20.
And then the employer would then have to pay how much more to then have that individual person qualify for that loan. That's insane. Why, I think...
I get it.
For me, it's
But do you think there still will be a buyer?
Oh, 100%. There will be. I think it's not. I can't see it doubling again like it did in the last 7 years or something.
Can you imagine if it does? I'm just saying.
Oh, that'd be ridiculous.
All right. We had such a great time on this podcast. Josh, I truly appreciate you coming on. One last question before you go. Any advice to my viewers on life or what I know we're all chasing the dollar. You have happy cash flow in your podcast, Dave, or, cash flow happy hour. Aside from cash, what would you say is important for someone to know about life? And it's an open question.
Yeah, the thing that's been the unlock for me is just putting yourself out there in whatever way it is. Okay. So if your friend said, hey, there's this real estate meetup coming up, but you don't have any rental properties or you're an introvert, go to it. Or maybe this is your sign to start posting whatever you're doing on social media. It doesn't mean the awesome success, but actually more people find value out of what you've learned from it than the actual, I just closed this deal. People will respect you more sharing how you've overcome the losses more so than those big wins. So whatever it is, meetups, virtually, marketing, talking to your friends and family about what you're doing, just put yourself out there more.
Love it. It reminds me of a book I read by Michael Strahan. He said, always try to go fishing or throw a line in the water. You never know which fish will bite. And that just gives you an opportunity, opens one door, another door opens another. Sitting at home, not going to get anything done. Josh, one of the best podcasts. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, what is your podcast as well? Share it with everybody. And of course, I'll link it below.
Okay.
Just truly thankful. You've shared great knowledge. I'm sure I'll reach out to you in the future. You're always welcome back on. Let the audience know, where can we find Josh?
Yeah, well, you can find me, my full name, so Joshua_Baldovino, and that's on Instagram, on YouTube, or on TikTok. And then if you want to find me on wherever you listen to on podcasts, you can look up the Cash Flow Happy Hour, and you'll find me there. But thanks, Simon, for having me on the show.
Hey, it's been great. I hope to come on your show one day.
We'll get you on.
Yeah, that'd be fun. It's been a pleasure. And you made a friend here, and you're welcome back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That was fun, huh?
That's it. Easy.